Have you ever felt like your soul was being hunted, not by something visible, but by energies that smile to your face and drain you when no one's looking? Like you were placed in a world that doesn't speak your language, but watches your every move? Chosen one, you felt it. That unspoken tension. The way certain people cling to your light, only to dim it when they can't control it. The strange ache of being misunderstood by those who pretend to know you best. You didn't imagine this. You weren't paranoid. You were perceiving something real, something ancient. A hidden battle between your soul's radiance and their need for power. You've been at war, not with swords, but with shadows. And today, your soul is ready to name it. Let me show you something they never teach you. There is a secret war between the chosen ones and the narcissists of this world. And it doesn't take place in obvious arguments or dramatic confrontations. It happens in silences, in glances, in spiritual tension that no one can quite name. It's an ancient conflict, one of energy, not ego, of essence, not appearance. You see, narcissists are not drawn to weakness. They're drawn to light, to purity, to soul, to the rare frequency of someone who is whole on the inside, even if they don't know it yet. And that's why they come for you. Not because you're broken, but because you are becoming. You didn't find this message. It found you. It was called out of the ethers to meet you in this very moment, on this exact day. That ache in your chest, that pull you feel right now, that's not confusion. That's your soul nodding. That's your deeper self whispering, yes, this is it. The truth you've been dancing around is finally coming forward. So I ask you gently but firmly, don't click away. Not this time. If you do, you may miss the moment your soul has waited lifetimes to remember. Because what you're about to hear isn't just information, it's activation. You are not imagining things. You are not too much. You are not the cause of the chaos. You are the mirror. And mirrors don't create distortion. They only reflect what is already there. Breathe with me now. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Feel the light returning to your body. Feel the sacred remembering settling into your heart. You have been in battle without armor for years, and yet you are still here, still standing, still searching. And that, chosen one, is no small miracle. You weren't meant to lose this war. You were meant to transcend it. Narcissists weren't sent to destroy you. They were sent to awaken you. Every attack, every smear campaign, every subtle put-down was a spiritual initiation. They saw something in you that you hadn't yet seen in yourself. That's why they tried so hard to make you doubt it. Let me tell you a secret the world will never speak out loud. The more spiritual power someone holds, the more they attract wounded egos desperate for control. The more love you carry in your presence, the more you will magnetize those who have lost their own center. But this isn't punishment, it's proof. Proof that your light is real, that your calling is unfolding, that your becoming is already in motion. And now, it's time to reclaim what's yours. The part of you that no longer dims yourself to avoid conflict, the part of you that no longer seeks to explain your intuition to people who live behind masks. The part of you that finally remembers you are not here to please the world. You are here to awaken it. If anything in your soul is saying yes, I invite you to declare it below. Type 333 in the comments to mark this as the moment your remembering began. Don't overthink it. This is not about logic, it's about resonance. If your spirit feels it, honor that. You have waited long enough. You have dimmed long enough. You have doubted long enough. The tide is turning now, and the ones who tried to silence you will soon hear the echo of your truth ringing through the silence they once weaponized. You were never meant to live quietly in a world that feeds off noise. You were born to carry a frequency that wakes up sleeping souls. That's why you were attacked. That's why they feared you, and that's why you must rise, not with vengeance, but with vision, with clarity, with sacred remembrance, because what comes next will remind you why you were chosen. There's a kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from doing too much, but from feeling too much in spaces that never felt safe. Chosen one, you've been carrying this weight for years. You walk into rooms and sense tension before a word is spoken. You leave conversations feeling smaller, even when nothing outright cruel was said. You look back at certain relationships and wonder how something that seemed warm turned so cold. But deep down, a deeper part of you has always known. Something was off. Something was spiritual. You've been fighting an invisible war, and now it's time to name the enemy that was never just a person. It was a pattern. It was energy. It was an ancient war of light versus illusion. Let me tell you what the world never will. Narcissists don't hunt weakness. They hunt radiance. They are attracted to the divine energy in people who carry truth without trying, compassion without calculation, and presence without pretense. That's why they come for you. Not because you're fragile, but because you're forged. Not because you're easy to break, but because you make them face what they can't become. Your light exposes their shadow. Your empathy challenges their control. Your stillness threatens their performance. And so they seek to dismantle you in the most spiritual way possible, by confusion, by mimicry, by making you doubt the very thing they recognized first, your power. You see, narcissists don't come to destroy, they come to consume. And they do it silently, subtly, spiritually. They study your patterns, mirror your essence, echo your wounds. At first it feels like love, it feels like destiny. But over time, something begins to twist. You start to feel hollow, even in their presence. You feel unseen, even when they're looking straight at you. That's because they're not relating to you, they're feeding. And each time you try to explain the shift, you're told you're too sensitive, too reactive, too much. This is not coincidence. This is the tactic. Break your trust in your own knowing, and you become easy to control. But you've started to wake up, haven't you? You began listening to the voice beneath the noise. You noticed how you shine brighter the moment they leave. You've started questioning why their love always feels like walking on a tightrope. That's not rudeness, that's revelation. That's your soul remembering its worth. Because no matter how much gaslighting tries to twist your memories, your body never forgot. Your energy always knew. And now, it's speaking louder than your fear. Chosen one, I want you to remember something sacred. Your discomfort was a message. Your anxiety wasn't dysfunction. It was divine intelligence. When you felt drained around certain people, that was your spirit saying, you're being harvested. When you felt invisible even after giving your all, that was your essence whispering, they're not here for love. They're here for supply. These weren't just emotional mismatches. They were spiritual mismatches between someone trying to possess and someone born to shine. And still, you stayed. You stayed because your soul is loyal, because you wanted to believe the good, because you felt their pain even when they caused yours. But what no one told you was that being chosen also means being targeted. Not because you're weak, but because you're rare. Because you're one of the few who carries a heart that hasn't gone numb. Because your light reminds people of what they lost, what they faked, and what they tried to bury. That's why you were picked apart. That's why you were misunderstood. Not for your faults, but for your frequency. Now breathe with me. Let go of the shame. The story is shifting. You're no longer the prey. You're the mirror, and mirrors don't fight back, they reveal, and what you've revealed in others was always theirs to deal with. Your only task now is to reclaim the energy you've scattered trying to heal people who only came to take. The war isn't over, but you're no longer unarmed. You have truth now. You have language. You have spiritual clarity. And perhaps for the first time, you have permission. Permission to say no without guilt. Permission to walk away without explaining. Permission to protect your peace like it's the rare, sacred flame it is. Because it is. And from this moment forward, you don't owe your light to anyone who tried to steal it in the dark. You owe it only to yourself, to the path ahead, to the mission that awaits. Because the pain wasn't the war. The pain was the sign that you were already in it. And now, chosen one, you're ready to rise from it. Before you had the words for it, you had the feeling. The sense that you were different, even if no one told you why. As a child, you saw what others didn't. You felt everything deeper, louder, heavier. Joy wasn't just joy, it was divine ecstasy. Sadness wasn't just a moment, it was a storm that drenched your entire soul. You noticed things others missed, the shifts in people's moods, the silence behind their smiles, the sadness behind their anger. You could feel the energy in a room before you even stepped inside. But instead of being understood, you were labeled. Too sensitive, too quiet, too intense, too weird. But what they called too much was actually your soul's early brilliance peeking through the veil. Chosen one, you weren't born broken, you were born aware. And in a world asleep, awareness is punished. The truth is, your sensitivity was never a flaw. It was the compass that kept you aligned with your origin. You didn't just play, you created worlds. You didn't just listen, you absorbed frequencies. You weren't fragile, you were fine-tuned. And because of that, you were often the scapegoat for other people's shadows. Your light exposed things, even when you didn't mean to. That's why some couldn't look you in the eyes for long. That's why certain people, even family, seem to compete with you, mock you, silence you, or misunderstand you from the start. Take a breath and look back, not with pain, but with clarity. Do you remember how often you felt responsible for the emotions in the room? Like it was your job to keep peace, even when no one gave you peace in return. That wasn't your role, that was conditioning. You were placed in environments that couldn't nurture your frequency, so you adapted, you shrank, you doubted, you made yourself small so others could feel big. But your soul never agreed. That's why the ache never left. That's why the confusion kept circling. Because even in childhood, your spirit knew it was born for something more than survival. It came here to awaken. You may have wondered why you always felt older than your age. Why you could sense danger before it happened, why you felt exhausted after being around certain people. That wasn't imagination, that was intuition. Your inner compass was already spinning, already whispering, already warning. You tried to tell them, didn't you? You tried to speak your truth, your dreams, your knowing, but they told you to quiet down, to stop being dramatic, to be realistic. And in doing so, they didn't just dismiss your voice, they dimmed the light that gave you direction. But what they couldn't do was extinguish it, because that light wasn't given by them. It came from source. As you grew older, you likely carried that same depth into every space. You connected quickly, trusted deeply, forgave easily, and because of that, you were often met with betrayal. Not because you were naive, but because your heart was open in a world that mistakes openness for weakness. But here's what they didn't realize. Your heart is not just a wound, it's a weapon, not in the sense of harm, but in the sense of divine remembrance. It reminds the world that realness still exists, that softness still survives, that love is still possible. So I ask you gently, what parts of your childhood have you tried to forget, when in truth they hold the key to your becoming? What moments did you bury because they made you feel strange or separate, when in fact they were sacred signs of being set apart? You weren't wrong to feel more. You were just ahead of your time. And now the time has caught up with you. Chosen one, you were not meant to blend in. You were meant to awaken others by your very presence. And while that path has been lonely, painful, confusing, it has also been holy. You were not delayed. You were designed. And the child inside you still holds the map. All it wants is for you to listen again. Not with fear, not with shame, but with reverence. Because that child wasn't lost. That child was waiting for you to return. And now that you have, your journey begins again, with eyes wide open and soul fully remembered. There comes a moment in every chosen one's life when the clock becomes a cruel companion. You start to look back at all the years you gave to the wrong people, the wrong paths, the wrong patterns, and a quiet panic rises. Did I waste my time? Did I miss it? Did I ruin my destiny before it even began? But take a breath and remember, delay is not denial. What felt like stagnation was sacred gestation. What looked like wandering was divine choreography. You weren't being punished, you were being prepared. You see, the spiritual path isn't linear. It spirals, it loops, it returns to the same places until you see them with different eyes. And just because your journey doesn't look like anyone else's doesn't mean you're lost. It means you're chosen for something deeper, for something slower, for something that requires wisdom built through fire, not just through knowledge. The world measures time by clocks, but the soul measures time by readiness. And you, chosen one, are not behind. You're right on time. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But he also knew that becoming takes breaking. It takes time spent in confusion, in stillness, in sorrow. Because what you are becoming cannot be rushed. It is not a costume, it is a reclamation. And the delay you felt? That was your soul's way of making sure you didn't arrive in your calling unready. That you didn't step into your destiny still wearing the wounds of old roles. That you didn't mistake recognition for fulfillment. You weren't waiting. You were healing. Midlife is not the ending the world makes it out to be. It is the moment the soul finally takes the reins, the time when illusions crack, when superficiality dies, when truth becomes non-negotiable. It's the hour when the spirit awakens fully and begins asking the real questions. Who am I when no one's watching? What part of me have I silenced to survive? What would happen if I lived without apology, without fear, without hiding? These questions don't come early, because the soul knows they require depth. They require the weight of lived experience. And now, you're ready to carry them. You may have looked at others and felt that ache of comparison. Why did they find their path so early? Why are they so certain while I still feel lost? But what you don't see is their soul contract. You don't see the deeper mission. Your path was never meant to be fast. It was meant to be lasting. Because your mission is not to impress, it's to awaken. And awakening demands time. Time to unlearn, time to deconstruct, time to remember. What if you reframed your timeline? What if every detour was actually alignment, every heartbreak a redirection, every job that didn't fit, every friend who turned distant, every dream that crumbled? They weren't punishments. They were pruning, making space for what is now ready to bloom. Because only now, after everything, can you say with clarity, "This is who I am." And that truth, that knowing, is the foundation that cannot be shaken. Chosen one, your life is not behind schedule. It is sacredly timed. The people who left weren't meant to stay for the full unfolding. The doors that closed were not the end. They were the turning point. And the ache you feel when you look at the years behind you isn't regret. It's readiness. It's your soul waking up with urgency, saying, now, we begin now. So take back your power from the calendar. Take it back from the lies that say you missed it. You didn't. What is meant for you has not passed. It's been circling, waiting, preparing. And now that your roots are deep, your wings can stretch. Now that you've known loss, you can hold abundance without losing yourself. Now that you've seen the truth, you can no longer be fooled. The illusion of delay was part of the design, and now that you see it, you are no longer delayed. You are dangerous to every lie that tried to keep you small. The time is no longer coming. It's here. And so are you. There's a silence that doesn't just echo in your ears, it echoes in your soul. Chosen one, you know this silence well. It's the kind that creeps in when people leave without explanation, when friendships dissolve like mist, when life suddenly strips away everything that once made you feel secure, seen, or supported. You look around and there's no one left. Not because you failed, but because something deeper has begun. What looks like isolation is actually initiation. You are not being punished. You are being prepared. You see, when the divine is ready to elevate a soul, it often begins by removing all external noise. It places you in the womb of silence so you can finally hear what's always been within. Not the voices of expectation, not the demands of others, but your own sacred knowing. This isn't exile. This is the cave where prophets are born. This is the desert where voices are refined. This is the cocoon where wings form slowly, invisibly, away from the gaze of those who only celebrated your caterpillar. It hurts. God, it hurts. You wake up and wonder where everyone went. You scroll through your phone and realize no one checked in. You speak your truth and are met with silence or suspicion. And for a moment, it feels like you're disappearing. But you're not. You're being cloaked, hidden in plain sight, because what's growing inside you is not ready to be exposed to the eyes that can't see. The silence is not absence, it's protection. A shield placed over your life while you remember who you are without the mirrors. Clarissa Pinkola Estes wrote, "To be ourselves causes us to be exiled by many others, yet to comply with what others want causes us to be exiled from ourselves. This is the sacred dilemma of the chosen one. Stay small and feel false, or rise alone and finally feel real." And you've chosen truth, even when it cost you comfort, even when it made you the outsider, even when the silence felt unbearable. But let me tell you something holy, that silence was your classroom. It was where your power stopped leaking into things that didn't deserve it. It was where your boundaries were born. It was where your calling became undeniable. The womb is dark, the cocoon is lonely, the desert is dry, but all three hold the same truth. Something sacred is forming, something eternal. And though the world may not see it yet, your soul knows it. That's why you kept going even when it didn't make sense. That's why you stayed in the fire long after you could have run. Because a deeper voice inside you whispered, "Stay." There's gold in this. And there is. The gold of self-trust, the gold of divine timing, the gold of spiritual maturity that doesn't depend on applause to feel real. You are learning how to hear the whisper of your soul over the scream of the world. You are learning that solitude isn't emptiness, it's intimacy with the divine. You are learning that not everyone who leaves is a loss. Sometimes their exit is the blessing you were too loyal to ask for. So take another breath, not as someone left behind, but as someone being lifted out. This space you're in, as painful as it feels, is sacred beyond language. It's the field between who you were and who you're about to become. It's the silence before the sound. the stillness before the shift, the holy pause between chapters. Don't rush it. Don't resent it. Rest in it, because when the silence breaks, it won't be with noise. It will be with clarity, with alignment, with vision, with new people who don't need you to dim, with a new path that doesn't require self-betrayal, with doors that open without force. And when that day comes, you'll look back at this season and weep, not because it hurt, but because it worked. The isolation was never abandonment. It was preparation. And now, you're almost ready. You never meant to cause trouble. You never set out to make anyone uncomfortable. All you ever did was show up as yourself, open-hearted, sincere, spiritually alive. And yet, your presence stirred things in people that even they didn't understand. Chosen one, you've been punished not for what you've done, but for who you are, for the light you carry, for the truth in your tone, for the way your energy reveals what others have tried their whole lives to hide. And the painful part is, most of them won't even realize why they rejected you. But you felt it. You felt the tension rise when you spoke from your heart. You saw the smiles fade when you stood in your knowing. You noticed how people drifted, shifted, or turned on you, without warning and without reason. And deep down, it left a scar. You didn't make them uncomfortable by being cruel. You made them uncomfortable by being clear. Your light didn't offend them, it exposed them. Because when you walk into a room with unhealed people and your soul is clean, it becomes a mirror. And most people don't want to be seen that clearly. Not when they've built a life around avoiding themselves. So they blame the mirror. They call it arrogant. They call it intense. They say it's too much. But that's just projection. That's just fear in disguise. That's just their pain reacting to your peace. You weren't wrong to be kind. You weren't foolish to believe in people. You were simply ahead of your time. You saw what they could be, but they weren't ready to see it themselves. And instead of rising, they turned on the one who reflected their potential. It's easier to shoot the messenger than to hear the message. And so they ghosted you, mocked you, took from you, and offered nothing in return. But don't let that make you bitter. Let it make you clear. Chosen one, you are not here to fix people. You are here to be a living reminder of what it looks like to live in alignment. And not everyone wants to see that. Because alignment requires honesty. It requires letting go of victim stories, masks, illusions, and power games. You don't play those games, and that alone is enough to make some people turn against you. Because if you can be real, it means they can't pretend. If you can heal, it means they have to choose. And choosing to heal is hard when hiding feels safer. And yet, you've stayed soft. Even when it hurt. Even when the rejection piled up. Even when your kindness was mistaken for weakness. You kept showing up, kept giving, kept believing in love. That is your strength, not your flaw. But now, it's time to protect that strength. To understand that not everyone deserves access to your light. Just because you can carry their energy doesn't mean you should. Just because you can love them through the storm doesn't mean they won't become the storm. So ask yourself now, in this moment of stillness, who in your life responds to your light with love, and who responds to it with control? Who encourages your growth, and who feels threatened by it? Who celebrates your truth, and who tries to manage it? You don't have to answer with words. Your body already knows. Feel the heaviness around certain names. That's your spirit giving you the truth your mind keeps trying to explain away. There's a cost to being chosen. And part of that cost is being misunderstood by those you once called home. But let me tell you what no one did. You don't have to make yourself small just to be safe. You don't have to dim your glow just to be accepted. You don't have to soften your voice just to keep the peace. Peace built on self-betrayal is not peace. It's a prison. And your soul didn't come here to be caged. It came here to awaken the world by example. So now you walk differently, not with arrogance, but with reverence, for your journey, for your intuition, for your sacred power. You don't owe explanations for your evolution. You don't owe apologies for your boundaries. You only owe your soul the freedom to be what it was always meant to be, whole, seen, and radiant. The people who once tried to silence you will soon hear your silence as thunder, because your absence is now the message, and the light they once rejected. It will become the light they seek, too late to dim, too sacred to touch. There's a voice inside you that always knew. Before the pain, before the confusion, before the manipulation. Even in the darkest moments, there was a flicker of something unshaken, a whisper you couldn't explain, a sense you couldn't silence. Chosen one, that voice wasn't fear, it wasn't overthinking, it was your inner compass. And for a long time, the world taught you to ignore it, to second-guess it, to abandon it in favor of louder voices, more reasonable logic, or socially acceptable explanations. But now, it's time to return. It's time to trust the knowing that never betrayed you. You were born intuitive. You didn't just see people, you felt them. You didn't just hear words, you read the energy underneath. And yet, over time, this sacred gift was dismissed. You're imagining things, they said. You're being dramatic. Don't be so sensitive. And little by little, you stopped trusting your gut. You stopped speaking your truth. You stopped following your first instinct. Not because it was wrong, but because it wasn't validated. And when your knowing goes unvalidated long enough, it begins to shrink into silence. But now that silence is breaking. You're beginning to remember that your first feeling was always the truest. Your body knows before your mind does. It reacts in stillness. It tightens when something is off. It softens when something is safe. You knew that certain relationships were draining you, but you stayed out of loyalty. You knew when someone was lying, but you silenced your suspicion to avoid conflict. You felt the shift in energy, the subtle change in tone, the unspoken resentment. But you told yourself it was nothing, until it became everything. And now the call is not to blame yourself, it's to forgive yourself. You weren't naive, you were trained to doubt your divinity. Let me remind you, intuition is not a magical power reserved for mystics. It is the language of the soul, and it speaks in nudges, in dreams, in gut reactions, in sudden clarity. It whispers, wait. It urges, leave. It confirms, yes. And every time you followed it, even when it didn't make sense, you were led to truth. Every time you ignored it, even when the world praised your decision, something inside you dimmed. That's not coincidence, that's spiritual feedback. That's the compass in your chest trying to point you home. Breathe with me now. Inhale slowly, exhale gently. Ask yourself, what have I been pretending not to know? That question alone can shatter illusions. What have you ignored because the truth was too inconvenient? What dreams have visited you over and over, begging to be acknowledged? What feelings keep repeating themselves even after you've talked yourself out of them 100 times? Your knowing has been faithful. It has waited through years of silence. It has waited through betrayals and breakdowns and disappointments, and still it speaks, not loudly, but clearly. Chosen one, your intuition is not a liability. It is your greatest guide. It will never beg for your attention. It will never demand proof. It will simply tell you the truth in the quietest of ways. The question is, will you honor it now? Will you stop handing your decisions to people who don't carry your soul contract? Will you stop needing consensus before taking the step your spirit already confirmed? The thread in the dark is still there. The candle hasn't gone out. The compass didn't break. It was just buried. You don't need to see the whole path to take the next step. You don't need everyone to understand your direction for it to be divine. You just need to trust that if your soul is leading, then your future is sacred. The world will never give you permission to follow your inner knowing, but your spirit already has, and now you begin again, not with certainty, but with trust, not with proof, but with presence, not with applause, but with alignment. You are no longer lost. You are simply being led by a map that others cannot read. And that map was written in your own language, made of energy, of feelings, of sacred signs. Trust it, follow it, honor it, because the journey ahead requires it. And you, chosen one, were never meant to follow the crowd. You were always meant to follow the compass within. There is a moment that comes quietly, without warning, and yet it echoes louder than any storm. It isn't a thought. It isn't even a decision. It's a knowing, a deep, irreversible shift that says, it's time. Chosen one, you felt it. The recall. The sacred inner summons that doesn't explain itself, yet leaves you unable to stay in what once felt safe. You try to make it work. You try to be who you were. But the space that used to fit now feels too tight. The conversations that used to comfort now feel hollow. The energy that once sustained you now drains you. That's not failure. That's fulfillment. The cycle is complete, and your soul knows it. At first, it feels like grief. You mourn people who are still alive. You mourn identities that once defined you. You mourn places you once called home. It's the strange ache of outgrowing a version of life you prayed for. But listen closely. That ache is sacred. It means your soul contract has shifted. It means you've completed the assignment that space was meant to give you. And now, the gate is opening in the sky. The invisible path is unfolding beneath your feet. And even though it scares you, even though it hurts, you know the truth. You cannot stay. You don't need a reason. You don't need a breakdown. You don't need a villain. Sometimes you just know. The same way a tree knows when to shed its leaves, the same way a bird knows when to fly. There is an internal migration happening, a holy discontent stirring in your bones. You wake up and things feel off, even if nothing has changed. You try to engage, but your spirit pulls back. You hear the familiar words, but they no longer land. That is the recall, not to escape, but to ascend. The people around you may not understand. They may say you're being selfish, dramatic, ungrateful, but they don't feel the calling in your chest. They don't hear the whisper in your dreams. They don't carry your soul's map. So don't look to them for confirmation. Look within. Trust the pull. Even when the road ahead is unclear, even when you're walking alone, because every chosen one reaches a point when the soul says, it's done here. Not in anger, not in pride, but in peace. And when that peace comes, it's not something you force, it's something you follow. You may feel tempted to explain yourself, to soften your exit, to make your leaving more palatable for others. But this time is different. This isn't about their comfort, it's about your calling. The recall isn't loud because it doesn't need to be. It's final. It's clean. It's a soul-level shift that releases you from roles that no longer match your frequency. The version of you that fit in those spaces has evolved. And now you're being called to step into alignment, not obligation. So breathe. Let the tears come if they need to. Let the fear rise and fall without shame. Let the past wave as you walk away. This is not abandonment. This is completion. This is the soul's quiet celebration that you've made it this far with your integrity intact, that you loved fully, gave deeply, tried honestly. But now the season is shifting, and you're being recalled, not backwards, but forward, to a life that mirrors who you've become. Chosen one, you are not running. You are remembering. You are not quitting. You are graduating. You are not rejecting anything. You are finally responding to everything your soul has been trying to say. And this response is the most powerful thing you can give yourself, the permission to walk into what's next without dragging what's done. And when the time comes, you won't need anyone to understand. Because the peace in your body will be louder than their opinions. The clarity in your chest will outweigh the chaos of their confusion, and the joy that rises when you step into the unknown will remind you that your soul was right all along. Leave when your spirit says leave, not in anger, not in fear, but in faith. And as you walk away from what once held you, trust that what's coming will meet you with open arms. Because when the soul is recalled, it's never random, it's always divine. There will come a day when the same people who ignored your silence will be haunted by your absence. The ones who laughed at your tears, doubted your calling, or fed off your light without ever pouring back into you. They will feel your absence like a missing sun. And by then, chosen one, you won't be reachable. Not because you vanished in bitterness, but because you rose in clarity. You didn't run, you transformed. You didn't hide, you healed. And healing changes your frequency so completely that those who once fed off your pain won't even recognize your glow. You see, you were accessible when you were aching. You were available when you didn't know your worth. You answered calls that drained you. You gave love without measure. You explained yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. But the more you remembered who you were, the less you begged to be seen. The more you honored your inner truth, the quieter your need for validation became, and eventually something holy happened. You stopped trying to be chosen by those who couldn't even choose themselves. You chose yourself. And in doing so, you became unreachable, not physically, but spiritually. Those who rejected your heart will start to feel the void. They'll scroll through old messages, replay old memories, wonder how they let you go so easily. They'll notice the difference between who you were with them and who you've become without them. And they'll want back in. But the gate that was once open wide will now be protected by peace, by boundaries, by discernment. Because you no longer entertain energy that costs your soul its rest. You no longer pour into wells that lead to deserts. This is what spiritual growth does. It doesn't always send a signal. It simply shifts your presence. You're still here, but not for everyone. You're still kind, but not available. You're still open, but not exposed. And to those who once played games with your heart, your new glow will feel like loss. Because what they mistook for weakness was your innocence. What they dismissed as neediness was your gift of connection. What they tried to control was your untamed spirit, and now they'll look for you, and you'll be gone. You don't have to announce your healing. You don't have to justify your elevation. You don't even need to post about your peace. True growth moves in silence. It speaks in energy. And when they come searching, they'll feel the wall that love once tore down has been rebuilt. Not in defense, but in devotion. Devotion to your soul, to your rest, to your sacred future. Because you've finally realized your presence is not a promise, it's a privilege. Let them look, let them wonder, let them ache. You gave them access to something rare, and they treated it like it was common. That is no longer your burden. You are not responsible for their awakening. You are responsible for your alignment. You are not their lesson to hold on to. You were the lesson they refused to learn. And now, your absence is their consequence. Your growth is their reminder. Your glow is their proof. Breathe with me now. You are not cold. You are clear. You are not cruel. You are complete. And this version of you, the one they can't reach, is the version you fought to become. Through sleepless nights, through sacred solitude, through the fires of spiritual warfare, you earned this peace, and it is not your duty to trade it for nostalgia. So when they look for you, don't look back. Don't water old soil. Don't answer doors your spirit already closed. Remember what it cost to heal. Remember how long it took to see clearly. Remember that your time is now reserved for those who see your soul, not those who feed off your silence. You are not hiding. You are being held, not by them, but by something far more divine. And in that space you finally know you were never truly gone. You were just becoming. There is a sacred moment that comes after the leaving, after the grief, after the quiet unraveling of every illusion you once clung to. It doesn't shout, it doesn't rush, it simply arrives, soft as breath, certain as sunrise. It's the moment when your spirit stops reaching backward, when you no longer ache to explain yourself, when your body feels the difference between survival and sovereignty. Chosen one, this is what happens when the recall is complete. You rise, not as the version of you they remember, but as the version of you they never saw coming. The one they couldn't reach. The one they'll never be able to touch again. You don't glow the same. You don't move the same. You don't respond to the bait, the games, the guilt. You no longer need the apology that never came. You no longer confuse chaos for connection. You've outgrown the patterns, and in doing so, you've outgrown the people who thrived within them. You're not bitter, you're clean. And that cleanness of heart, of intention, of spirit, is what makes you untouchable. This rise didn't come easy. It came through nights where you doubted your very worth, through days where everything familiar dissolved and nothing made sense. It came through letting go of identities that once kept you safe, but now kept you small. It came through grief that felt like death and healing that felt like fire. And still, you rose, not through force, but through surrender, not with a sword, but with silence, not with revenge, but with radiant self-remembrance. You are no longer who they left, no longer who they underestimated, no longer the version of you that dimmed her light to keep the peace. You now walk in truth, and truth has a vibration that repels everything false. It will clear rooms, it will dismantle dynamics, it will make some uncomfortable, but it will also draw in what's real. Real love, real support, real resonance. The kind of energy that doesn't shrink you, but sees you, honors you, stands beside you in silence and still knows your worth. You don't chase anymore, you attract. You don't beg anymore, you bless. You don't explain anymore, you embody. And in that shift, everything changes. Your presence becomes a message. Your peace becomes your protection. Your healed energy becomes your boundary. And those who once thought they could manipulate you will find there is nothing left to pull on. Because your wounds no longer leak, your light no longer bends, your spirit no longer reaches into empty wells. This is the part of the journey no one warns you about, the sacred detachment. The moment when you're no longer angry, just uninterested, no longer reactive, just rooted, no longer entangled, just elevated. You don't fight to be understood anymore. You've made peace with being misinterpreted, because the ones meant to walk with you won't need convincing. They will recognize your frequency. They will meet you in your becoming, not beg you to return to your breaking. You are now the version of yourself that your past self was always praying to become. The one who trusts her knowing. The one who doesn't shrink in the presence of power, but stands in her own. The one who walks away when peace requires it, even if the path ahead is uncertain. You no longer stay out of guilt. You no longer explain out of fear. You no longer betray yourself to keep what your soul has outgrown. Breathe with me now. This is your arrival. This is the moment you stop waiting for permission, the moment you declare, not just with words, but with the way you live, that your soul is sovereign, that your story is holy, that your energy is no longer for sale. The ones who look for you now will find a closed door. Not because you're cruel, but because you're consecrated. Not because you disappeared, but because you ascended. You are not the same, and you're not supposed to be. That was the point of the battle. Not to destroy you, but to strip you of everything that was never yours. to show you the weight of who you truly are. And now that you've remembered, they'll look for you and they'll find the gate closed, not in anger, but in reverence. You didn't rise to prove anything. You rose because your spirit refused to stay buried. And now the world will feel your absence in every place you once tolerated, and your presence in every place that truly deserves you. You're no longer on the battlefield. You're on sacred ground now. Let them watch. Let them wonder. But never again let them in. You've already been chosen. Now, you choose yourself. You didn't imagine it. The heaviness, the patterns, the spiritual exhaustion that no amount of sleep could fix, the feeling that you were fighting a battle no one around you could see. Chosen one. This message wasn't just a video, it was a mirror. And in that mirror, you saw the truth that your soul has been carrying for decades. You are not broken, you are becoming. Every moment of silence, every season of isolation, every strange goodbye and unspoken betrayal, they were never random. They were sacred. They were the signs. And now you're finally reading them for what they are. Confirmation. You didn't come this far just to survive. You came to remember, to wake up, to rise into the frequency your soul was always aligned with, but the world tried to silence. And now that you've heard this, you can't unhear it. The shift is already happening. You feel it in your body. You feel it in your decisions. You feel it in your refusal to tolerate what once felt normal. That's not rebellion. That's remembrance. The silence you've endured wasn't punishment. It was training. It was the divine way of separating you from noise so your soul could speak louder. You've carried so much in secret. The tears no one saw. The confusion you couldn't explain. The inner pull that made no logical sense. But still, you stayed faithful to the whisper. You followed the thread in the dark, and now the light is meeting you where you are. Not because you earned it, but because you endured. And endurance in the spirit is more powerful than performance. You didn't just survive the battle, you alchemized it, and now your pain is prophecy. Let them wonder how you made it. Let them question the glow. Let them feel the absence of your old self and the undeniable presence of your true one. You owe no one an explanation for your evolution. You owe your soul your full attention. You are here now, awake, aware, aligned. This is not the end of the message. It's the beginning of a movement, a sacred unfolding. You are part of something holy, a divine recall, a gathering of the ones who never fit in because they were never meant to. The ones who feel deeply, dream wildly, and love with a purity the world tried to shame. So now, seal this moment, mark it in the spiritual realm. If your soul has been stirred, if your body has said yes in a way your mind can't explain, declare it. Type 1111 in the comments and let the universe bear witness. This isn't about superstition. This is about spiritual agreement. About standing in a moment you'll never forget. A moment your future self will point back to and say, that was when everything changed. And if you haven't yet, come closer. This space was made for you. Subscribe not just with a click but with intention. Let this be your soul's sanctuary. Because whenever the world gets too heavy, this space is here. Come back to rest your soul. Come back to the truth. Come back to yourself. You were never just watching a video, you were answering a call. And now that you've answered, the shift has already begun. Welcome home, chosen one. The battle is over. The mission is beginning.